Much better. Okay. So
Cool.
let's dive in. I want to know what kind of ideas you have in terms of, I wrote down a couple of things that I took note of on your website. One of the things I don't think I watched this video, but it was called post-capitalist co-housing. And then there's another one that talked about democratic co-housing as well. So I'm just curious if you could explain to me what all that means and how you see it moving towards that.
Yeah, sure. Post-capitalism is really the label I'm referring to, a movement that's going to start chopping away at capitalism. So if we think of capitalism as being the 100% commodification of everything, everything has to be paid for and earned. I'm simply saying that there's some things, some essential ingredients of existence, namely shelter, energy, food, and water. Those things shouldn't be contingent upon money. Those things should be human rights. And so I'm simply trying to decommodify that by using crowdsourced communities, so bringing in social media into the housing industry and using a sort of global force of people who are on the same wavelength, who could simply pledge £1 or however much they want to, so that we can reclaim our land and hold it in common to effectively liberate ourselves from this system of slavery, which it effectively is, so that we can every day wake up and not have the fear of these rent and bills that are forever increasing and restricting our lives into dead-end jobs that we don't particularly want to engage in. And seeing as that's such a large portion of our lives, it makes sense for us to have the time to actually find what it is we want to be doing with our lives, as opposed to simply having to do something for our own survival. So it effectively, through this liberation of having the basic things that we need, so those four things again, like shelter, energy, food, and water, I've sort of devised an architecture or an autonomous type of co-housing scheme. So autonomy simply meaning freedom from external control, where the residents of these projects will simply have that freedom, where they're waking up and they don't have this burden that's constantly pressing for the end of the month for them to return the money to the developer that is behind a lot of these projects that exist at the moment. Conventional housing is always coming from one person that is perhaps a millionaire or has some sort of investment, so coming from vested interests. The whole society that we're living in, architecturally and domestically with our housing, is coming from the psychology of profit over people. Whereas if we introduce the global population into the housing industry, we can effectively decentralize that whole approach and do effectively what the government should be doing already. So the government is effectively a centralized form of crowdfunding, but the crowdfunding is compulsory. So that is a breach of free will, as far as I'm concerned. But what they should be doing with that money is offering it out to referendum how that should be spent. So if we had that sort of referendum, a democratic approach to our housing, at no point would we decide to charge ourselves to exist. I mean, I always just think of like a desert island or something. Like, at what point, if there was 10 or 20, 30 of you, at what point would you begin to charge yourself for these huts that you're designing and building, just in the middle of nowhere? And in fact, if you zoom out and just look at the planet as a little desert island, which it effectively is, we're doing the same thing to ourselves on a global scale. But it's being imposed upon us because we don't have the power to effectively overthrow these landlords because we don't have the money to do it. But together we have all the money in the world. So if we can simply organize people, as Martin Luther King was saying, in the sense of like, all we need to do, those who love peace must learn to organize themselves as effectively as those who love war. That's all we need to do. And this social media has given us that opportunity, even though it can be used for idiotic purposes. And there's all this sort of nonsense around social media, and there's definitely loads of detrimental effects they can have on our minds. We can also use it, it's a neutral tool, basically. Technology is a neutral thing. It's up to us how we use it. So I'm simply saying, if we go onto humanityczonnective.com, we can connect and share and support this movement that can effectively allow us to democratically position us into a much better society that's based on true freedom, abundance, and well-being for everyone. There's no reason why we can't achieve that. It seems like something that's pie in the sky, blue sky thinking. But really, now that we've got the technology in place, this could be done just right now. It could be done today. It's just about having the awareness. And the architecture makes that possible by using specific technologies that already exist. So it's not about ones that people talk about, free energy systems that aren't yet brought in, and so maybe they're in the next 10, 20 years, etc. But I'm trying to use just systems that actually already exist, tangible products for us to integrate into these buildings, which can allow us to have this autonomy. So there's no connection to centralized water supply. There's no centralization of electricity or power. It's effectively that's being decentralized. But that doesn't mean that we have to, like, often one thing that people start thinking about when I start saying these things and using terms like autonomy, they tend to think of that as turning your back on the community, or they think of it as this kind of like commune. Like, you get these sorts of comments because they haven't yet visualized the spaces and the fact that we can do this in a professional way. So the website helps people to sort of visualize some of these spaces. Like, I've got some examples on there. And of course, there's like co-housing projects that exist today, but they're not done democratically. And really, the profound shift is psychological. So the co-housing projects, I've even lived in one myself about 4 years ago, is all done effectively in exactly the same model as capitalism. So someone will try and get investment, and that those vested interests will trickle down to the fact that people are paying over £1,000 for these tiny little ensuite rooms. And you see, like, one particular place that I was living in West London, there was about 500 rooms, and people would sort of go there and go, oh, it's lovely. You get, basically you get your own private ensuite, but you also have these community spaces. That's effectively what co-housing is. It's just a community of private apartments supplemented by shared spaces, whether it's a library, whether it's a living spaces, whether it's an atrium where you hold events, and maybe there's like co-working spaces. But all the ones that exist today are all being done from this hierarchical model. So they're effectively leading to the enslavement of human beings. And people can't see that because it's so normalized in culture. It's just everywhere. That is the de facto model for creating housing schemes. And so I guess I'm just trying to flip that on its head and empower the people and allow the people to come together and fund something that's truly for them, so we can actually start to experience this freedom that we all really want when it comes down to it. I mean, there's always going to be resistance from certain groups and certain individuals, developers, etc. But really, that's all irrelevant, because we, as a population, can connect. And really, it only takes, let's say, critical mass of probably even 500,000, 1 million people, and this could really quite kick off quite quickly. So it's a very simple concept, but there's obviously a big discussion. There's so many different avenues that can be very impactful in a very positive way in society. So there's lots of topics that can spin off from it. But ultimately, it's about creating true freedom in society and trying to remove some of the mental illnesses that people are experiencing through these social norms, such as Monday blues, TGI Friday, etc. All these things have become so normalized that they can't realize that it's the social conditions that are creating those mental conditions. And so we have therapists and we have all of this, and that has its place. But it's like, without actually understanding and diagnosing the underlying causal factor, we're continuously forgetting that we're not even free to simply be. We're supposed to be human beings. It's more like we're human doings. We're constantly having to do stuff all the time. And we've forgotten that we're just simply supposed to be. And if we want to engage in things, which we naturally do, we want to find employment, we want to find a strong purpose in life, that's all going to happen anyway. It's just that you don't have to do it for your actual survival, which allows you to then have that freedom. What do I want to do? I want to do this, I want to do that. And naturally, you'll still want to pay for T-shirts, going on holidays, the car, all that stuff's going to happen. It's just that at the end of the month, you're not having a considerable portion of your income going straight back to the person that's charging you for those basic things again, shelter, energy, or mostly just shelter and energy in terms of the rent. So it's really about decentralizing the housing industry and trying to bring the community into crowdsourced ways of creating a new earth, as I've said on the site. So many different things in terms of the hydroponics and these systems that we have now today, and waste to energy systems, atmospheric water generators. Nothing is really needed technologically, or once you have the specific technologies that I've been implementing, all you need is air. And if you have air and you have the building resources in these technologies, then you have effectively almost everything that you need in terms of the essential ingredients. So we're talking about shelter, energy, food, and water. And really, it's something that I've been developing, for the last few years, and it's been difficult to get moving with it because I try and pitch this to people. It seems too big. It seems like too much of a huge thing, and like a lot of people are also entrenched in the ego. So if I approach another group or another community, they are so wrapped up with what they're doing that it's almost like an invasion. Like you're trying to overlay these ideas with their ideas, and instead of them just saying, okay, well, this is for the betterment of humanity, it's more about, well, you're doing this, I'm doing this. That's, like, who do you think you are? This is the sort of vibe that I've got so far. So I've had to just say, okay, this is something I need to do on my own. I've seen other people build up big channels, YouTube channels, Instagram pages. It can be done. As an individual, you can get the sort of exposure that you need to create change. So if you've got the vision, I think like we perhaps don't need to cling on to these larger institutions anymore. But it's definitely been a hard journey, and it's been one that's been slow moving. But I'm hoping if I put more and more energy into the social media and everything like this, then hopefully it can kick off quite soon. But yeah, that's really why I'm trying to. I'm going to start making more vlogs and start making more material, and just putting the simple message out that underlying it all, we just need to come together and organise ourselves. And then once we've done that, and I think that's the one thing that the establishment is most fearful of, is this coming together, this uniting, and people actually starting working together. Because obviously the whole agenda there is seemingly to divide and rule, as we've been previously talking about. Taking this on my own, again, like came from earlier discussions of the awakening I had, and it just led me down this path. So it's just been a strange old journey that started off quite blissful, and over time it became sort of a burden. And I was like, you lose belief, and when you lose belief, the wheels just stop. And you see, right now it's like coming in and out, and like, oh yeah, I'll keep going with this. This is obviously my path. I should be doing this. And so really, yeah, the more it grows, more momentum it gathers, more people can see that this is, for me, a feasible, tangible response to a lot of poverty, inequality, the gentrification, all of these kind of ill effects of capitalism can be resolved by simply giving ourselves the basic right to exist, which to me just seems like an intuitive thing that we should all desire. But unfortunately, I think like people have been sold the illusion of freedom, as we were talking about previously as well. So that really is a very concise, or as concise as I can perhaps be about it. It's just a huge thing. It's very at the core. It's very simple, and hopefully we can start raising some awareness for it. But yeah, it's humanitykonnective.com, and the website's on there. You can connect on the site, and there's also the Instagram page and the Facebook page, Humanity Connective. So that's how people can connect with me if they'd like to do so. And I think we're seeing lots of self-sustainable, safe, sort of eco-friendly movements going, but I think we need to overlay that with the psychological shift that I've been talking about as well, right. Because people also say, "Well, that's already been done, Adam. This has already been done." Like, firstly, brilliant. Let's do it again. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about the ego. You see, to say, no, everyone is suffering. It's like if you see someone just suffering on the street, and then you help someone, and then you help someone else. It's like someone saying, "No, someone's already done that. It's down the road." It just doesn't make any sense. So, firstly, let's keep doing it, and secondly, it's more so about the psychological shift that bringing these millions of people together can transcend this individualist approach to building homes for profit. So instead, we can do it for people and not profit. As basic human rights. And that's effectively the movement that I've been trying to get going. And like I say, it's if I put a little bit more energy and a little bit more effort into it, hopefully I can start reaching out and getting this to take off. I mean, it's been, like I say, years, so I don't want to keep working in these. I can't bear working in these studios anymore. Like since everything changed for me, it's like the idea of me going to help someone out on a loft conversion just doesn't stack up anymore. Or just going to help a very rich couple just manifest their dream house. This doesn't. I can't engage with that anymore. So yeah, we'll just see how it goes, and I'll just try and stay present with it, and hopefully it'll accelerate, and I'll be able to be supported by it soon. That's my dream, I suppose, to actually be supported by it and just do it on a daily basis. Do that, my whole mood and everything would be elevated from that. So yeah, that's loosely the concept.
So have you already started any crowdsourcing projects that are specific to a certain goal?
So the crowdsourcing. So what I was originally trying to do was going to be the case of bringing people together first, getting the numbers together, and then saying that the crowdsourcing begins at, say, 500,000 or 1 million followers. So that there'll be like an event, like you'd have some sort of marketing around, and it's like, okay, crowdfunding is today, but now I'm deciding that perhaps I should just have it there as a step 1, step 2, step 3. So connect, share, support. So there's just something that you can do in 5 minutes, and your part is done. Like whether you pledge £1 or £2 or however much you want. So that's something I'm currently opening up. I'm just trying to get that resolved on the site. So I'm sort of beginning to open up support page and donations so they can go onto these things. But really, the whole thing begins with the acquisition of the land. So the first crowdfunding would be about the land.
Right.
And so there's a whole page of where this is going to happen on the site as well. And that's really, it doesn't have to be set in stone. So really it's about where the momentum is generated. But typically it would be in the suburbs of a city that's suffering the ill effects of capitalism, where there's a huge inequality, there's poverty around, and there's gentrification. These are the sort of cities that I'm targeting and hoping to get some sort of intervention in. So whether that happens here in London or whether it happens in America or South America is really kind of something that can be brought into fruition and refined over time. So yeah, the crowdfunding begins with the funding of the land, and then from then that would be, say, phase 1. Phase 2 would then be the crowdfunding of the building itself, and it would be basically a conventional approach to construction. It's just that the only shift that's occurred is that instead of one person with £1 million, we now have 1 million people with £1, and that is a total psychological shift that can allow us to do stuff for ourselves and for the people, as opposed to continuously having to pay these ridiculous amounts in rent and bills that so many of us can't afford anymore. I mean, some of the places in London, you don't even get a window and you're being charged thousands or £1,000, £1,100, and you get a studio and you don't have a window. I mean, this is getting more and more absurd as the years go by. So yeah, that was really the product of my, I guess, the synthesis of my architectural training, but also just my general philosophical outlook in life and my experience of feeling like a slave in some of these architectural studios. And I think I want to make the point that it's a psychological slavery, not physical slavery, because people often try and pull me up on that and say, hey, this is nothing like, we certainly have more freedoms than we did in the past. It's just that now that we've been more manipulated psychologically to give ourselves the illusion that we are free. And I can choose where I work, for example, but I can't choose whether I work. So really it's irrelevant to which, say, plantation I'm in. It's like I can go there, I can go there, I can go there. Eventually it's all the same. It's just this architecture studio, this architecture studio. Everyone's working for the rich. And really I'm trying to make it so that we can all work for ourselves and for people that are less well off than ourselves. That's really the underlying philosophy behind the whole thing. So yeah. Good luck to me.
Yeah, man. Well, you're doing great work. So, like you said, that you're hoping to get to a certain critical mass before you actually crowdsource for a particular project. But I don't know if I heard this right or not. But have you opened yourself up to like donations so you can help grow your platform?
Yeah, so I've just done that literally yesterday,
Awesome.
and I think it's got some errors with it. I might have to change the way that I've gone about doing that.
Mm,
But yeah, they definitely by next week there'll be that functionality on the site, so that people
awesome.
can just pull in and pull out and then stay connected, and they've done their bit, and that's all that's really required at the moment. I think it's mostly the step two, which is the most important bit, which is about sharing. That's like the most powerful thing that people can do. So people have started sharing the posts on Instagram,
Mm,
and it's really about the exposure and the sharing. Like if I had just a huge megaphone and I could just speak to the whole world just for 5 minutes, I feel like, oh god, that's all that needs to happen. That people just need to hear this, and then they'll be like, of course, that's what should be happening. But yeah, so the exposure is easily the most important thing, and I think that's why I postponed the idea of donations, because really the donations will come later point perhaps,
mm.
or just trickle in slowly. But I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be able to financially support me in the short term. But that's why, yeah, sharing is the best thing that people can do for the time being. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe at some point, I've got a timeline on the website as well, and I think I've sort of anticipated, or I'm hoping by 2023, I think it was, to have reached say 1 million or 500,000. But this is quite a tall order. I think it's getting harder and harder with this Instagram algorithm to people. And so, but that's my target. I think about 2023 to at least reach say 500,000. But I don't know. We'll just have to see how that pans out. And I can only just keep doing what I can do as the sole person behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
we can just see which way it goes. But I have faith that this is part of my path. I always think like you follow your excitement, or as Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, and the universe will open doors where there were once only walls. I quite like that quote, and I just think that's true as well. Like you follow your excitement, you follow your path, and you just have this faith that things will pan out the way that they should do. Maybe it's not always going to work out like that, but I think like that's quite a nice way to stay present.
Exactly how the universe works, man. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
You follow, if you stay true to yourself and do what you know to be right in your heart, then doors will open for you. That's just the way it goes. You follow those breadcrumbs and you just keep going, my man. Yeah. And yeah, the reason why I asked about that is because, like you said, like the biggest thing people can do right now is exposure. But, if you open yourself up to the donation aspect, then the more money you have, the more exposure you can buy. Like you can buy exposure in this day and age. So it's important that you have that support. So you got to open yourself up to be able to take that
that's a good
donation.
point. Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
So with that being said, like if anybody's listening to this, I've often said on my podcast before to like in order to contribute to that new world, we have to vote with our dollar. We have to support things we truly believe in. So I encourage anybody who's listening to, this will come out next week as well. So you got a week to get that donation set up on your page. So hopefully by the time this episode comes out, you got that set up. So in terms of anybody listening, I encourage you to go to humanitykonnective.com and make a donation. I'll be doing so myself because it's something I truly believe in.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Well,
it's been great speaking to you.
I want to ask a couple more questions, and they could open up, a deep rabbit hole, but I just want to know what your opinion is on a couple of things. These are things I jotted down earlier in our conversation. The first one you actually mentioned a couple of times. I remember you saying you studied physics, right?
I was very bad at it. I studied it. The only thing that I've ever experienced where I enjoyed it, but was terrible at it. But somehow I enjoyed it.
And then you also mentioned later talking about the different ways we can provide ourselves with energy. And I agree, there are enough technologies that we're already aware of that we can definitely, support the whole world. But I'm curious what you do think about free energy systems and if there's something that is possible or something that we will be implementing at some point.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think these things already exist. They have probably done for a long time, or many decades at least. Or if you go into ancient history, I think they had all sorts of sound technologies and all sorts of other ways of generating electricity or generating energy. absolutely. I think these things exist in what we're going to call them like black ops projects, or just behind the scene, and they're just rolling things out slowly but surely. But in terms of free energy, I guess, once you have a recursive system in place, then effectively what I've been trying to do is to create a free energy system as opposed to a specific one piece technology that generates the electricity. So once you have, like I say, the atmospheric water generators, you might need an initial kickstart from a centralized system of energy. But once you have this cycle, and I won't go into it now, but like basically once you have water, you have food. Once you have food, you have all this material that can be converted into biofuel, which can then be through methogenesis, biofuel, and then you have fertilizer. You have this whole ecosystem that's autonomous and self-sustainable. You're generating your own electricity from bio waste. So that in itself is a sort of free energy system or recursion that's occurring. And that's really what nature is about. Everything is sort of recursive. You look at a plant or you look at a tree, all of this, you can then take a cutting from a plant, and then in a couple of weeks you've got another plant again. So from the seed is all this abundance. And so we live in this planet of abundance, but we've been told that there's all these scarcity of resources, and we've told that there's only a finite amount of things. But actually, when you understand nature, you can actually start to tap into these cycles that are happening all around us. And there's always billions of liters or gallons of water in the environment, in the air. So if you can tap into that, you've got yourself water. And if you've got water, then you've got the production of a yield of food, of a whole urban network, potentially, of productive resources. So, and then from that we have all sorts of ways of generating materials, and the whole rise of 3D printing, etc. There's all sorts of amazing, interesting ways of now creating abundance from very little resources. So that's the thing that I've been mostly focusing on. But absolutely, for sure, I believe that there are and have been devices that have been shut down. I mean, not the least Nikola Tesla, of course, and what he did and how he created wireless transmission of electricity, shut down by the banks. And then I think Searle, the guy John Searle, came up with the whole rotational kind of CERN, actually. What is CERN? I can't remember, but I think it's John Searle, actually, L-E. He had a whole device which was also being capable of generating free energy, which is just based on this rotation of electromagnetism. He created a whole electromagnetic field, and he actually struggled with keeping it on the ground because it's like, I think a lot of it's tethered and tied in to anti-gravity of these free energy devices, and even UFO crafts. They are sort of built around this type of engine that's naturally anti-gravitic. So you're creating energy, you're also changing the vibration of the mass, so that this 9.71 meters per second of gravity is just totally changed. I don't know if you've seen like acoustic levitation and cymatics and these type of things. Are you familiar with these ones? Yeah. This is what's like, I'm quite interested in all these things because I just love, I watched a video about a levitating frog the other day. So I'm constantly just fascinated by these new technologies. So I guess it's like, because we were just talking a lot about spirituality and everything, like you said, like most of us come from a scientific background in the West, and it's not about like discarding all that, because that's all fascinating in of itself, but more so like about bringing these two things in together. So yeah, I'm equally fascinated in the scientific endeavors and trying to get free energy through to people, because that's really where the true liberation is. Once you've got free energy, you've got, suddenly you can't have a state of dependency anymore. And I think that is increasingly apparent that's the agenda of the ruling elite, or the misleaders, whatever you want to call them, the globalists, the people who want world government. They want that state of dependency, or the model of China that we said is the blueprint for the West. And with the masks coming in, it feels like that's increasingly what's happening as well. That's definitely a subject that I'm interested in. And in terms of the free energy technology, have you seen any other pieces of technology that are worth researching or investigating, or things that are pending, things that are coming in soon? Have you been following any of this kind of topics?
I haven't seen anything lately, but like when I first got interested in the subject years ago, I've seen many YouTube videos of people actually creating devices of some kind that were perpetual in a sense. Like even just a basic idea, somebody just took a computer fan and put a magnet on each blade of the fan and then put another magnet outside of the fan so that every time a blade would come along, it would get repelled and it would have this continuous spin because of the magnetic force. And I was like, well, isn't that not like perpetual energy? Like what am I missing here?
Yeah.
So concepts like that have always, and they really intrigued me. Another one, this came from my own imagination. I pictured basically a hollow cylinder with a rod or like a solid cylinder in the middle. And then you would have like a circular magnet that goes down over the rod like that within this hollow cylinder. And the floor of the cylinder itself would have a magnetic charge. It would be of some sort of metal, and then the ring that goes down over the rod would also have a magnetic charge. So when the gravity would pull the ring down over the cylinder, but the magnetic push from the bottom would repel the ring. But then if you like when you have that compression of magnetism, there's an electric current because of it. So to me, it seems that you could just plug in a wire into that space where there's that gravity pulling and magnetic pushing, and there's that resistance there. There's that magnetic energy between those two things. You could just put a little wire in there and it would draw out the energy. Like that seems to me like it's plausible, and I don't understand why it wouldn't work. So yeah, there's things like that I've considered. But yeah, I don't see many people these days with devices. I've looked, and it seems to me every time somebody had a device, they would be accosted by some sort of investor and be like, yeah, I want to buy your product. And they would either sell it for $1 billion and then give them this non-disclosure agreement saying you can no longer talk about your product.
Yeah.
Or the people would be like, I don't want to sell my product, and then they end up dead. So this happens a lot in history. So yeah, it seems pretty evident to me that there's something, but when we get to the point that it's actually out there in the public, I don't know when that's going to come.
There's some sort of more novelty devices I've seen about. Some guy from New Zealand who designed some vibratory sphere. I can't quite remember how it works, but you basically just dunk it into your tea and you've instantaneously got boiling water.
Wow.
And he was shut down.
Of course.
I heard that through Michael Tellinger. Actually, he's a South African researcher. The Ubuntu movement you might have heard of. He's into all the vibration, the sound, and all these ancient sites, and how he was thinking that they were basically energetic kind of generators that were allowing them to mine gold, as we alluded to earlier. Like, why are we here? Where do we come from? Or the fingerprints of the gods, I think. Or that's Graham Hancock, isn't it? But yeah, that's similar sort of ancient technologies. He's interested in those things. But yeah, for sure, I think like these things have been around, and they're being basically they're being concealed, or they're being sequestered, and they're being you can't have that because there's too much money to make. But it strikes me that if you've got a moving fan, then you've effectively got a moving blade in a generator. If you use the same principle, so if you've got the same thing in a turbine, because effectively all of these big power plants that we see where they're burning coal, is this not effectively creating the torque or the movement in a turbine to be generated to move? So it's really about, same with a wind turbine, right? So if you've got like just movement, circular movement, constant like this, then you've got free energy theoretically. So it seems like this magnetic approach to a fan, if you can amplify that to a point where it's spinning efficiently, then that's free energy right there. I'm going to try that. I've got a fan right here.
There you go.
It's absolutely boiling hot here. So
get some magnets on the go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm going to get some magnets on that bad boy and see how it works.
Yeah. So yeah, the only other question I want to ask you is something we kind of talked about when we were talking about like the pandemic and everything. And what came to my mind was how we were talking about how each rollout of new technology ostensibly could be connected to a new level of illness. So, like you said, like back in the Spanish flu, that could have been connected to radio waves. So, what it makes me wonder is that if all these electromagnetic waves are causing us some sort of illness, is there a way to create a global internet, a global connection through electromagnetic waves, but in a healthy way that doesn't damage our DNA or affect the oxygen we breathe or whatever it is that these waves ostensibly do? Do you think there's a way we can actually create that energy, but have it flowing through us all the time, but it's in a healthier way that doesn't actually damage our body?
So I think this is actually happening. I think like the internet is just a technological extension of reality. So like this is man's creation of nature. So I think these we see like certain insects and birds seemingly possess telepathy. Like if you look at these starling murmurations, like they're not communicating with each other verbally. Like you can see how they move. And this is coming from something else, whether it's like telepathy, whether it's something intuitive. Similarly, with insects, we can see, you leave a bit of cake on a bench, or, and within seconds, you've got this whole army of ants coming towards it. And how are they communicating? So I think there is a natural Wi-Fi, so to speak, that already exists. In terms of the detrimental effects of the human-made internet, I think this is something that is there's a sort of reacclimatization that's required. So it's not continuously bad for us in terms of health, but it's when you're first introduced to that disturbance in the electromagnetic field, there's some side effects which are flu-like symptoms. Historically, if we look at, like you say, mirroring the 2003 epidemic with the 4G rollout, or 2009, 2003, and like you say, earlier 1916, there's always been this new upgrade, quite a big notable upgrade of Wi-Fi or wireless technologies. And then today, 2020, I think like this is what they've been using as a scapegoat to sort of just, like I say, just remove the accountability from the technology. They don't want that because the ultimate end game for them is this technological dystopia, effectively. I mean, we've all seen The Matrix. This technological AI-run Orwellian type state. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's I feel like if the technology is accountable, then that's going to be quite a spanner in the works for them. So they can't have that be seen that there's a detrimental effect to it. But I think there's loads of conferences now like coming together about 5G. There's loads of papers. Obviously, there's loads of resistance about it. But for me, it makes sense that if we are electromagnetic beings and we're in an electromagnetic field, if you disturb that in quite a strong way with this 5G, I mean, I know they're rolling out sub 6 gigahertz to begin with, but they're going to be ramping that up. And as I think David Icke pointed out, at 60 gigahertz, the human body can actually not absorb oxygen. So when you think of oxygen as being a vibration as well, like they say in The Matrix, do you think that's air you're breathing now? You're effectively breathing in this vibration, this vibratory field. It's not so much that we think of the molecules. So they are impacting our natural innate habitat. So I think for a short window of time, and there are some of these effects, but I think it's subjective. Like some people won't be affected, other people will. I think it's very contingent upon a number of factors. But it does strike me that there is something fishy about it, and it doesn't surprise me when you think of the effect that electromagnetism has on us, just digitally, like looking at these screens and stuff. These artificial manufactured lights and rays and stuff seem to throw things off a little bit. I mean, people make the point of like, oh, well, why isn't this light bulb affecting me psychologically? And perhaps it is on a very low level. But I think like we need to be more attached to the natural light of the sun, and this is where we get our vitamins from, etc. So yeah, they're creating kind of like a technological sub-reality, and I think the spearheads of that movement are like Elon Musk and Bill Gates at the moment. Or I think they're being called they're sort of the what do you call it? The sort of the people who are facilitating this for the real shadowy figures that we don't get to know about.
Right.
It's just that's the whole conspiratorial aspect of things that we were talking about earlier. But I mean, we have the power though, as people like to conclude with. We have the ability to transcend all of this if we just come together and empower ourselves using social media and getting connected and subscribing to new ideas, better ideas, and I'm pretty sure all of this stuff that people like to dwell on, all the darkness, would just become irrelevant. It's quite easy to get absorbed in it. I do myself, and it's like you want to know, and you look further and further and further. And I think to a certain extent that is my path, to sort of help to raise awareness of what's going on with regards to that. But I never want it to be the focus. I think like we should always be focusing on the solution. That is the wise thing to do. Otherwise, you just end up in a state of fear again. Yep. But hopefully things will improve for us soon.
We know it, man. We don't need hope. It's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Yeah, no hope. It's going to happen. Yeah, it is going to happen. And we can make it. That's what I mean. Because hope is sort of a disempowering term in a way. It's sort of it pushes it out into some sort of chance happening.
As if we're not in control.
Yeah, exactly. And we are, man. We totally are. So, yeah, hopefully, well, again.
It's very conditioned in you to have that hope. That's the thing.
It's going to happen.
Absolutely, 100%, without a doubt. We're creating it right now, my man.
Word.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Adam, man, that was incredible, dude. One of the most exhilarating conversations I've had. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You're doing incredible work, man. And again, anybody who wants to find you, humanitykonnective.com. Also the same thing on Instagram, right?
Yeah, Instagram, and then I attempted the YouTube thing, but it takes a lot of work. That one.
Yeah, I was the same way.
I was like, okay, build that one slowly but surely. Instagram's a little bit more instant gratification, but you can get a message across a bit quicker. Like fewer people are probably going to engage with these videos now, I think. So it's quite nice to just have a simple post. Here's the concept. Here's the whatever.
Right.
But yeah, really amazing talking to you, and I hope to talk again at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
To be up for that. I mean, there's just so many different topics that we haven't even talked about today. So,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can split this out into, like you say, part 1 and part 2. Then, so there's just the charitable bit as a separate thing. Probably just start talking about that, so that people can hear that from the outset. I think we talked quite a length before that. So yeah, just let me know when you want to hook up again, and I'd be more than happy to do that. I'll try and get a better setup as well next time. Clearly,
there you go. It's time to invest in some better equipment. I have a feeling you're going to be doing a lot of talks at some point.
Yeah, I really hope so. I'd love to be. That's sort of my dream, is to be able to move around, and I don't really like being fixed in one location. I get quite bored quite quickly of the same routine, so I quite like to just dart around, and it would be lovely to go around, travel for your work. That's what I really like to do. So yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, man.
All right.
So again, to anybody listening, since this is out in a week time, Adam should have his donation set up on his website. Go give him some money so we can create this better world. All right, man.
Nice. Appreciate it.
Today. Thank you, man.
Cool.